I think we've all heard about the thing called the space race. Because in recent years, I've seen a lot of memes on Reddit, on Twitter, that suggest that, like, the Soviet Union was the superior country in the space race. There was no space race. The USSR was genuinely interested in science and exploration. The only racing was the US, and they lost. This is inspired from this guy here, who just did an amazing job. So if you want like an intellectual idea of what I'm talking about today, go watch his video. I want to briefly explain something to you about the Soviet space program and also Russia as a country in general, as a term. It's called smikelka. Smikelka is roughly translates to native wit. The concept of smikelka is this idea that Russians have this capability of kind of improvising and finding interesting ways to solve certain problems without actually addressing the original problem that led them to get into this situation in the first place.
The car in the top left has a spare wheel on the back. He just didn't put it
Oh
on.
yeah.
He just took off the old one and strapped a log to it instead.
And they take this very seriously, and it's promoted like Smikelka. The reason I bring this up, and it's this damn meme that pisses me off so much. This idea that the NASA spent millions and millions of dollars on this pen to write in space because you can't use a regular pen. But the response is yes, but the USSR used pencil. Here's the problem. Pencil tips are made out of graphite. I don't know how I feel about graphite particles in a zero-G confined space. So we're going to do the first satellite. Don't get me wrong, the Soviets did put the first artificial satellite into space. This is Sputnik 1 on the 4th of October 1957. It made its debut
Fun
in
fact,
space.
this is younger than Donald J. Trump.
Don't ruin this video presentation.
So yes, this was the first artificial satellite into space, but the reason why it was the first troubles me slightly. Sputnik was supposed to sort of look like this. It had a lot more scientific instruments, but here's the thing, at the same time the US was developing Explorer 1. It could measure radiation, temperature. The Soviet higher-ups were slightly freaked out by this, so they told the engineers, downgrade everything about the original Sputnik, get rid of all the scientific equipment that wasn't ready yet, and they slapped it onto an ICBM, shot it into space, and they got this. I guess the USSR beat the Americans on this one.
I want to interject with something I find quite funny. There is one piece of Sputnik left, and it was a safety pin. Do you want to guess where that safety pin is now? NASA owns it.
Sputnik lasted about 1,400 orbits. Explorer 1 stayed in orbit for 12 years. The Soviets were not the first in space. Would anyone like to guess the country who was the first in space? Tim, you are banned from that.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I know the answer, so.
I'm gonna say it was Britain.
I'm gonna guess something outlandish. I'm gonna say it's Madagascar.
I'm gonna say like South Korea.
I don't think South Korea existed yet.
I'm gonna say Korea.
I hope Tim is laughing right now, because if any of you guess Nazi Germany, that is correct.
You know, that should have come for that.
Can anybody name this lovely woman?
The first lady in space.
This is Valentina Tereshkova. Now, why did the Soviets send a woman to space? The Soviets don't like it when the Americans have something that they don't have. So what they did was they essentially grabbed a woman who had some skydiving experience, trapped her in a suit, and then threw her up into space. During her trip, she essentially tries to impress the ground control team, since she had to take control of the ship to make evasive maneuvers. She didn't, or should I say she couldn't, because the entire flight was on a trajectory that she could not control or modify. To this day, she still claims that she took evasive maneuvers, even though that was literally impossible to do. Now, to be fair, the Americans took way too long for this to happen. But to give America credit, for NASA, it wasn't about putting the first woman in space, it was putting a trained astronaut into space. And Sally Ride was definitely qualified for the job, while the Soviets were very big on pushing that they got the first woman into space, even though she had, well, putting her life in danger for not being a trained cosmonaut in the first place. Now, I'm going to put moon landing in quotation. This was done by the Soviets on 12th of September 1959. Now, you might realize that the name is Luna 2 and not Luna 1.
Did they miss?
They did miss the moon.
Can I just really quickly? Why do Russian space capsules all look like steel balls?
You've just mentioned it, and now that I look through my entire presentation,
They're
you
all
are absolutely correct.
Yeah, literally every Russian
They
capsule
did-
you've shown us is a ball.
Coming soon to own on video and DVD.
We finally have access to the channel after 3 long months of grappling with Google's support chatbots and watching like a helpless orphan looking in the window as the channel drifted captainless through the waves of YouTube. Now that we're back, we've got some huge news. First, we'll be kicking things off with a bang on April 9th with our first live stream of the year. It's another trial, this time for the ending of Attack on Titan. The whole team regularly gets into fights about this, so you're gonna want to be there. Next, we'll be starting a regular schedule of live streams following the trial, so leave a comment below about what kinds of games and activities y'all want to see us doing. Finally, to celebrate the return of the channel and the academic exercise it represents, we're all taking part in March Madness. This team spans multiple continents and cultures, but rest assured there's a British man on the other side of the world currently fuming that the Clemson Tigers got their asses handed to them. To all our audience members who waited patiently for our return, we sincerely thank you. And to everyone who remained a channel member through it all, you have our undying support. Let's make 2025 a banger year for Sir Swag Academy.
And now, our feature presentation.
I'm going to change a little bit of the pace of this because I actually want to promote something that the Soviets did really well, and that was their Venera program, which is their exploration of Venus. Venus's atmosphere is really thick, so they were ambitious to land on Venus, and I respect them for that. They did it in 1970 with Venera 7. This was followed by Venera 8 and 9. They actually were able to take photos. This is a real, actual photo, and the US still has never caught up to this achievement. And this kind of goes into the Soviet Mars missions. So Mars 1 crashed on the planet, and so this doesn't count. Mars 2, and also, like you said, Skipty, a spherical.
I know, that was what I thought as soon as you showed this, was yet another metal sphere.
Mars 2 did eventually soft land on the planet. How long do you think it lived for? I mean, it could be a couple of years, months, 11 seconds. Which one do you think?
3 hours.
Still functioning.
Well, I gave you a clue. It's 11 seconds. I have to say something. I'm going to glaze America for a second, because I don't think you pay respects to your Mars mission or Mars projects as much as you should. So Viking 1 was the US first attempt to land on Mars. And it did in 1975. And it lived much longer than the engineers had predicted it would live. And this is a common theme in JPL and NASA's Mars program. You have these amazing things that just won't die. Currently, Curiosity was expected to survive for 3 years. It is on its 11th year and still demanding more missions. So everything that the US has done on Mars has just been not only a success, but an overwhelming, almost too much of a success that it's becoming a bit of a problem. So while yes, the USSR could claim the first landing on Mars, it's just not even a competition of how successful the US has been on Mars. I want to make a reference to this document, which is free online and downloadable. And what you're looking here is what made Apollo a success. It's a IKEA instruction booklet to how to get to the moon. What I liked about this book was the amount of redundancies NASA had for every single aspect of the Apollo missions. Everything from the simplest knob not working, or the simplest program was malfunctioning. They had redundancies for all these issues, every single one of them. And here's the thing, the Apollo 11 mission had so many failures on it. Everything almost failed on it. But the reason why it was a success was there was a solution to every problem on these missions. What about Apollo 13? That was a failure. So we have the Houston, we have a problem scene. But in reality, though, this is kind of the reaction that Mission Control had during Apollo 13.
Okay, now let's everybody keep cool. We got Len still attached. The Len spacecraft's good, so if we need to get back home, we got Len to do a good portion of it with.
So yeah, not as freaked out as predicted just in the movie.
I can almost picture myself in the writing room for that scene of someone saying, okay, but they had already planned for this, and one of the writers saying, we have to make it seem like they came up with it on the fly.
The Soviets did actually have a moon program.
Yet another goddamn steel ball.
Look at that ball.
They even had an EVA suit. That was pretty cool. And they had a rocket called the N1. I'm gonna just show you the clip of the second launch attempt here.
Oof.
Fine, right? That's fine. It's fine. Ooh.
My God.
It's like a Hollywood explosion.
By this time in U.S. space program, you guys were so bored of going to the moon that you stopped doing it. The U.S. had already explored essentially every major celestial object in the solar system. They had already started to program their way to leave the solar system and also take photos of the universe around us. So Soviets just sort of gave up. They just never pursued it.
It was for the
And
love of
I'm
the
gonna-
science, Crusty.
And but I just want to ask a question to the American audience.
Yeah, because we don't hear your voices enough.
What would have happened if the Soviets had landed on the moon first? Do you honestly expect me to believe that the Americans would have just gone, yeah, well, they did it first, I guess we'll just give up and do something else?
I think maybe the best case scenario would have been that it would have pushed Americans into doing something more extreme, like actually setting up a base. If Russia beat us to the moon, then we would have had to be the ones to make an encampment there, right?
Actually, that's the plot of For All Mankind. Is that because the Soviets put someone on the moon, America's like, okay, we gotta like put bases on this thing.
Yeah, that's what I think would have happened.
What if it's me looking down on me? The world above must also be. This could go on for infinity.